right, a big election is coming up, quote unquote big. I think anytime we get a chance to vote, it's something we should take advantage of, and especially when there are important amendments on the ballot. And we decided, all right, let's bring on our great friend and expert who can sort of delve into these for us. And you've heard me talk about an organization that I think is doing a great job, and that is LACAG. You can check out the details at LACAG.org. And one of the great leaders of the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group is our friend Chris Alexander, who's with us here on the Ringside Politics Hotline. And hey, Chris, good morning, sir. How goes it?
Good morning, Jeff. How are you this Good Friday?
Oh, I'm doing great. And thank you so much for the time. I know that, LACAG has had just a great growth over the past few months, and you've got all kind of people now going to the website regularly for information. And I just wanted you to just sort of share, before we get into the amendments, a little bit about the mission, the purpose of the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group.
Sure. Our central purpose, Jeff, is to track the actions of rhino Republicans in the legislature who are killing very good conservative legislation and promoting bad conservative legislation, whether it's vaccine mandates, speech censorship, election integrity, education, school choice, whatever the issues are. We have a group of rhino Republicans in the legislature who are undermining the agenda that the vast majority of Louisianans agree with. And we are exposing that publicly, and we are holding them accountable. And that is our mission, and that's what we're doing. And we are making a lot of progress and growing very rapidly.
Yeah, and these legislators aren't used to that. They aren't used to a watchdog really holding their feet to the fire, are they?
No, they're not. And it is something that it was just recently proven in a state Senate race down in District 17, where a conservative Republican, Caleb Kleinpeter, beat an establishment Democrat in a largely Democrat district. And he did it in a primary because groups like ours and others effectively informed the voters about what the incumbent was actually doing in the legislature, and they didn't like it. And he beat him in the primary. And so that is, I think, a bellwether race. So it's a really, really, really good sign.
I like your motto. If you're a rhino in Louisiana, LACAG is coming for you. That's great.
Amen. And we're doing it without apology.
Yeah, that's awesome. Much needed. Okay, so I hate how they structure these things, but we had 8 amendments on the ballot in November. We talked to you about all of those in detail. We wanted to have you back on to talk about the additional 3 amendments that they put on the ballot for December the 10th. And Chris, the turnout is going to be minuscule, so we need people to go vote, and we need to tell them that these amendments are important. And with your cooperation, I'd like to go through them one by one, starting with the first one, which will provide that no person who is not a citizen of the United States shall be allowed to register and vote in this state. Some would say, Chris Alexander, why is this necessary? Isn't this already the law of the land?
Well, it's the law. The Louisiana Constitution right now provides that only Louisiana citizens can vote in Louisiana elections. But there's no specific provision that prohibits non-citizens, U.S. citizens, from voting in Louisiana elections. Now, many would say that it is implied, but there are local municipalities across the country, 15 of them, who are allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections. There is a massive assault on our border. We have millions of illegal immigrants coming into the country, and there's a massive push by the left to allow them to vote in local elections. Under these circumstances, the added protection of wording in the Constitution that specifically prohibits non-U.S. citizens from voting in any Louisiana election is very necessary. and we are for it for that reason. We need the added protection to make it very clear. And
because
it's very important.
You make a good point. You said these 15 municipalities across the country. I can see maybe a council in Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and especially New Orleans trying to push to allow, non-citizens to vote in those areas where you have left-wing leadership here in the state of Louisiana.
That's exactly right, Jeff. And all the amendment does is specifically prohibit any non-U.S. citizen from voting in any Louisiana election, period. It needs to be spelled out explicitly to close off any theoretical loophole that may exist in our Constitution right now.
I think you're exactly right about that. I think it is important, and for this reason alone, everyone should go out and vote for Amendment Number 1. You might not think it's likely. We need to just add that added level of protection, no doubt about it. So that is a big yes for Amendment Number 1. Amendment Number 2, to make appointed members of the State Civil Service Commission subject to confirmation by the Louisiana Senate. Tell us about that, if you could.
Right now, Jeff, the governor of Louisiana has complete, unchecked power to appoint very powerful administrators, like the several commissions, the board, the Civil Service Board. The governor can appoint the head of that or any member of it without any legislative oversight whatsoever. And this bill, these amendments 2 and 3, would require the Senate to ratify and approve any governor appointment, period. And it is so important. It's important that the governor not have unchecked power. Many argue that, well, the Senate's not, they're just going to rubber stamp the governor anyway. Well, maybe they will, but at least this gives them the authority and the power to oversee governor appointments. And it's consistent with the separation of powers doctrine in the Constitution, and we're going to demand that the Senate do its job. So these 2 amendments are very important because it will allow the Senate to oversee and approve governor appointments to very powerful boards. So the amendments are important, and we're going to put pressure on the state Senate to do its job.
You make a good point, because here in Louisiana we have this all-powerful governor, and the governor has way too much power, and the legislature many times is just a lapdog, a rubber stamp. They don't feel like they have enough authority to really challenge the governor. Anything we can do to give them more power to sort of equalize the powers of the different branches and to have more oversight to an appointment, I think is very important. So I agree. I think we definitely need to support Amendment Number 2, which requires the consent of the state Senate for confirmation of the governor's appointments to the Civil Service Commission. No doubt about it. All right. Amendment Number 3, to make appointed members of the State Police Commission subject to confirmation by the Louisiana Senate. A very similar issue, correct?
Yes, a very similar issue, and the same rationale applies. State Senate oversight, ratification of governor's nominees to the State Police Commission. It's a very powerful commission, and, there's an old saying, Jeff, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when there is legislative oversight, which the Senate is constitutionally required to exercise, then it creates more transparency in the process and prevents corruption in government. And that's why we support Amendment Number 3 as well.
I agree completely. So 1, 2, and 3, we all need to support, get out there and vote for. I think they're steps in the right direction, and certainly something that I think we should all get behind. Chris, hang on. We're going to take a brief time out. I know you want to address also another issue concerning a specific politician. So let's get into that when we come back. Chris Alexander with us of LACAG. And that is the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. And, of course, the people do need a lobbyist. We want to keep our elected officials accountable to the Constitution and to the citizens of Louisiana. whose concerns and values have been ignored for too long. It's time to take our state back. Louisiana first. I like it. Quick time out. We'll be right back. All right. A few more minutes here with our special guest. The group is LACAG, and that is the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. Check out lacag.org for more information. Great website, all kinds of resources on there. And Chris Alexander, you've been doing a great job over the past few months highlighting what happened in the last legislative session, talking about good legislation that was killed, bad legislation that was passed, and been calling out certain individuals that really deserve more scrutiny, correct?
That's exactly right, Jeff. There is, but something came up this morning. I am going to talk about a particular politician, but because this issue is so important and it just came up, I'm going to talk about one on the federal level. Right now, Jeff, in the U.S. Senate, there is a bill called the Journalistic Competition and Preservation Act. You know, and I know that big tech social media has been massively suppressing our speech. In fact, our Attorney General has a lawsuit pending that has exposed the fact that our government is actually colluding with big tech to suppress our speech. Well, you know how the U.S. Senate right now, today, wants to solve that problem? They want to allow the legacy media to negotiate, the traditional legacy media, to negotiate with big tech to come to an agreement about what speech is going to be allowed on social media and what is not going to be allowed. And this way they say they're going to create less suppression and more fairness in speech. It is a lie. A group of conservative U.S. senators sent a letter to the leadership yesterday opposing this bill, the JCPA, because all it's going to do is allow big tech and the big legacy social media to come together and continue to suppress the speech of conservative Americans. They act like the only speech that exists in the country is big media, the big legacy media and the big social media. So they're going to come together and they're going to decide what can be heard and what isn't. What they're leaving out is the average American citizen. This is going to kill free speech in the United States of America, and they're trying to tuck it in to a defense authorization bill. It is going to be a disaster. And every conservative U.S. senator sent a letter to Mitch McConnell yesterday saying, you have to oppose this bill. You've got to oppose it. And you know what U.S. senator is not on that list of conservative senators? U.S. John Kennedy.
Yeah, well, he's a lead sponsor of the bill, isn't he?
He is authoring it and he is sponsoring it, and he is absolutely not opposing it. This is going to destroy free speech in the country, and every one of your listeners has got to get on the phone and call Senator Kennedy's office and tell him he's got to change course on this bill. This is going to destroy free speech, and it's going to further solidify the leftist monopoly on free speech in this country.
What is the position of our other senator, Bill Cassidy? Do you know, Chris?
Bill Cassidy is not a sponsor of the bill, but I'm confident that he is not opposing it.
In other words, he's
probably quite charitably. But Jeff, you understand the point here. Big legacy social media and big tech are not opposed to one another. They're already colluding to suppress the free speech of Americans. Right. And this is going to do nothing but solidify it. It is going to destroy the First Amendment in this country. You know what else it's going to do, Jeff? It's going to shut off it eliminates antitrust protections, and it's going to foreclose the Republican investigations that are coming against the collusion that has already occurred. This is how they're going to try to get out of the congressional investigations that are about to start when the Republicans take over. It is so important that this not pass.
let's go over it, and we're visiting with Chris Alexander of LACAG, Jeff Crouere here. It is Ringside on WGSO. We're talking about the Journalism Competition and Preservation Act, JCPA. Lead sponsors are Amy Klobuchar and John Kennedy. Carving out for establishment media outlets an antitrust exemption, allowing them to form cartels to collectively bargain with big tech companies. Proponents argue that it would even the scales and force the hand of big tech by making the tech giants pay media outlets for their content. But critics worry it could make many of the problems facing both industries much worse because of serious structural flaws in the bill. And we need to oppose this, and we definitely need to contact Senator Kennedy and Cassidy on this issue. So you had a bunch of, senators contact McConnell about it, so blocked from moving it forward for now, but you're worried it could come back up, right?
Yeah, we are worried about that, and the important thing to remember, Jeff, is that the big legacy media companies and big tech are already aligned with each other. Mm-hmm. They are not diverse. They are already colluding or working to undermine speech of Americans, conservative speech of Americans. So this is not going to do anything except further solidify that monopoly that they have on free speech in the country. It is a lie. The fundamental premise of the bill is a lie. And that's what we have to remember, because philosophically, they're already aligned. And John Kennedy, to be an author of this bill, is going to be his death knell, especially if he has any intention of running for governor. Jeff Landry.
Well, here's an issue. Here's an issue where Landry is on one side. He's issuing a clarion call to Americans to voice opposition to this legislation. He's already in the race for governor. Kennedy may announce a campaign. This could be a big dividing line between the two of them. And maybe it shows us who the real conservative here is, Chris Alexander.
Absolutely. And, I don't think Kennedy should run for governor even if he were a true, consistent conservative. Because we already have a candidate. He's in the U.S. Senate, and we don't need the kind of internecine warfare in the Republican Party anymore. He needs to stay where he is. But if he does have any intention of running for governor, he needs to publicly come out and do an about-face on this bill that's going to destroy the First Amendment in our country.
Yeah, and this is not the only piece of legislation that he's worked with Amy Klobuchar on, which is sort of an interesting alliance between the two of them. And I don't know, questionable. So, all right, we need to call Senators Kennedy and Cassidy on this and let them know what we think about this and tell them to stop this Journalism Competition and Preservation Act. And really follow what Jeff Landry and our friend Chris Alexander are saying about it, that it could be extremely detrimental.
Jeff, there's one last thing before we go that I need to mention.
Yes, sir.
In the Defense Authorization Appropriation Bill that's also pending in the Senate, there are a number of senators who want included in that bill a specific prohibition against the military being able to discharge soldiers because of their vaccine status, because they don't want to get the COVID vaccine. And that amendment needs to be included in that bill. 3,400 soldiers have already been kicked out of the military because they don't want to get the COVID shot. It's destroyed their lives and it's destroyed their families. This amendment will explicitly prohibit soldiers from being discharged from the military if they refuse to get the COVID shot. It will also allow them to be reinstated with back pay. That needs to be included in this appropriations bill. It's very, very important. And so we also want people to call Senator Kennedy and Senator Cassidy and ask them to demand also that amendment be included in this bill. The vaccine mandates in the military are destroying people's lives.
And this is happening at a time that we're already having a hard time recruiting enough members for the military. Recruitment is at an all-time low. We can't be kicking out people that we have trained and spent a lot of money on. And they're also our heroes, our veterans. They're standing up for their principles. They shouldn't be removed from these important positions. But because of that belief, we need to honor that. And I completely agree that this needs to be included in this National Defense Authorization Act. So, very important information, my friend. And Chris Alexander, thank you for the work you're doing. And folks, check out LACAG.org, LACAG.org for the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Chris Alexander with us right here on Ringside.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right, sir. All right. Thank you, Chris. Take care. We'll have a brief time out. Get the latest from Louisiana Radio Network. We'll be right back.